Hello dear students, I hope you are doing well and are safe and healthy. Today we are starting chapter number 4, Gender, Religion and Caste of your book Democratic Politics Part 2. In the previous chapter, we noted that the existence of social diversity does not threaten democracy. Democracy is the best way to fight for recognition and also to accommodate diversity, as political expression of social differences is possible and sometimes quite desirable in a democratic system. In this chapter, we apply these ideas to the practice of democracy in India. We look at the three kinds of social differences that can take the form of social divisions and inequalities. These are social differences based on gender, religion and caste. In each case, we will look at the nature of this division in India and how it gets expressed in politics. We will also find out whether different expressions based on these differences are healthy or otherwise in a democracy. Let us begin with gender division. The word gender refers to the different values, attitudes and behaviors that are attached to the roles of males and females by different social and cultural groups. From this originates gender division. There is a form of hierarchical social division seen everywhere, but is rarely recognized in the study of politics. The gender division tends to be understood as natural and unchangeable. However, it is not based on biology, but on social expectations and stereotypes. Boys and girls are brought up to believe that the main responsibility of women is housework and bringing up children, and men do all the work outside the home. This is reflected in sexual division of labor in most families. It is a system in which all work inside the home is either done by the women of the family or organized by them through the domestic help. The public sphere is that of adult males, and the private sphere is that of women and children. Consequently, men tend to be defined by what they do, whereas women are associated with nurturing relationships. Women do all the work inside the home, such as cooking, cleaning, washing, clothes, tailoring, looking after the children, etc. It is not that men cannot do housework. They simply think that it is for women to attend to these things. When these jobs are paid for, men are ready to take up these works. Most tailors or cooks in hotels are men. Similarly, it is not that women do not work outside their home. In villages, women fetch water, collect fuel and work in the fields. In urban areas, poor women work as domestic helper in middle-class homes, while middle-class women work in offices. In fact, the majority of women do some sort of paid work in addition to domestic labor, but their work is not valued and does not get recognition. The value attached to the work of males and females differs. Most women work much harder than their male counterparts, but the invisibilization of women's work fails to get them their due share. The housework and childcare are not considered work. If I ask you this question, how many of you have working mothers? It is most likely that only those of you will say yes, whose mothers go out of the house to work. It is only because of the invisibilization of the work. The work done at home is unaccountable and considered unproductive. The result of this division of labor is that although women constitute half of the humanity, their role in public life, especially politics, is minimal in most societies. Earlier, only men were allowed to participate in public affairs, vote and contest for public offices. Gradually, the gender issue was raised in politics. Women in different parts of the world organized and agitated for equal rights. There were agitations in different countries for the extension of voting rights to women. This movement by women for their voting rights was called suffrage movement. Since then, many other agitations demanded enhancing the political and legal status of women and improving their educational and the career opportunities. These movements emerged from women's desire to revolutionize the fundamental aspects of the female life at that time: domesticity, employment, and education. More radical women's movements aimed at equality in personal and family life as well. All these movements are called feminist movements. A feminist is someone who supports equal rights for women. So, if your brother objects strongly to women being paid less than men for doing the same job, he is probably a feminist. If you believe that women should have the same political, social, and economic rights as men, you are a feminist. It has absolutely nothing to do with putting down men or boys in order to elevate the status of women. Political expression of gender division and political mobilization of this question helped to improve women's role in public life. We now find women working as scientists, doctors, engineers, lawyers, managers, and college and university teachers, which were earlier not considered suitable for women. In some parts of the world, for example, in Scandinavian countries such as Sweden, Norway, and Finland, the participation of women in public life is very high. According to the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, almost 3 in 4 working age women in Nordic countries are part of the paid labor force, and policymakers explicitly support gender equality at work, at home, and in public. Iceland is the world's most gender equal society, a position it has now held for last decade. In 2016, the number of Swedish women equaled males in ministerial positions for the first time, and it ranks number 1 in the index for this. In Finland, women make up 42% of Finland's parliament and 38.5% of ministers, which accounts for the nation's strong political empowerment rating. In our country, women still lag much behind men, despite some improvement since independence. Ours is still a male-dominated, patriarchal society. Patriarchy is a social system in which men hold primary power and predominate in roles of political leadership, moral authority, social privilege, and control of property. Women face disadvantage, discrimination, and oppression in various ways. One of the ways is the literacy rate. The literacy rate among women is only 54% compared with 76% among men. Similarly, a smaller proportion of girl students go for higher studies. When we look at school results, girls perform as well as boys, if not better in some places. But they drop out because parents prefer to spend their resources for their boys' education rather than spending equally on their sons and daughters. If you look at the data on the slide, you find that literacy rate is most skewed in India in comparison to other BRIC countries. The high rates of illiteracy among Indian women and the corollary gender gap in literacy attainment are attributable to many social, economic, and cultural factors. No wonder the proportion of women in highly paid jobs is still very small. On an average, an Indian woman works 1 hour more than an average man every day. Yet, much of her work is not paid and therefore often not valued. While India has become the world's 5th largest economy, its workforce participation rate of women has sharply declined. If you look at the data of India's 158 largest companies, we will see that women only hold 15% of the board seats and that only 6% of board chairs are women. If you look at the slide, you will be able to see a steady decline. Reaching gender parity should have a bigger impact in India than in any other region in the world, as India's youthful demographic will add 234 million workers to the labour force by 2027, and almost half of it would be women. Another problem is in payment. The Equal Remuneration Act 1976 provides that equal wages should be paid to equal work. However, in almost all areas of work, from sports and cinema to factories and fields, women are paid less than men, even when both do exactly the same work. According to the latest World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index 2019-20, India ranked 112th out of 149 countries on the Gender Gap Index. The gender pay gap is slowly shrinking in India, but the rate is very, very slow. It declined by only 1% in 2018 in comparison to 2017. Women earns 65% of what their male colleagues earn for performing the same work. In many parts of India, parents prefer to have sons and find ways to have the girl child aborted before she is born. Hence, we have one more problem of skewed sex ratio. Such sex-selective abortion led to a decline in child sex ratio in the country to merely 919. Sex ratio is used to describe the number of females per 1000 males. As the map shows, this ratio has fallen below 850 or even 800 in some states. According to the Census of India 2011, Indian sex ratio has major signs of improvement in the last 10 years. From a small number of 933 in 2001, the bar has been raised to 940 in 2011 Census of India. Although this improvement is fair enough in a developing economy, but still there is a long way to go. With an overall improvement in sex ratio, the states of South India has shown major signs of improvement in comparison to states of North India such as Haryana and Punjab, where sex ratio is far lower than the national average figure. There are reports of various kinds of harassment, exploitation and violence against women. Urban areas have become particularly unsafe for women. They are not safe even within their homes from beating, harassment, other forms of domestic violence. All this is well known. We all know about it. Yet, issues related to women's well-being or otherwise are not given adequate attention. This has led to many feminist and women movement to conclusion that unless women control power, their problems will not get adequate attention. One way to ensure this is to have more women as elected representatives. Let us consider the following figures related to women participation in parliaments all across the world. Only 24.3% of all national parliamentarians were women as of February 2019, a slow increase from 11.3% in 1995. Another figure says only 11 women are serving as head of state and 12 are serving as head of the government. Again, a very, very low number. Another figure tells us that globally there are 27 countries in which women account for less than 10% of parliamentarians in single or lower houses, including 3 countries with no women at all. In India, the proportion of women in legislature has been very low. For example, the percentage of elected women members in Lok Sabha has touched 14.36% of its total strength for the first time in 2019. Their share in the state assemblies is less than 5%. The national average of women in state assemblies and state councils, that is upper house of the state legislature, was 9% and 5% respectively. In this respect, India is among the bottom group of nations in the world, as you can see in the graph. These numbers are epsilon. India is behind the averages for several developing countries of Africa and Latin America. India stood 149th in a 2019 list of 193 countries ranked by the percentage of elected women representatives in their national parliaments. In the government, cabinets are largely all male. Even when a woman becomes the chief minister or the prime minister. While we have had a woman prime minister, a woman president, women external affairs minister, a women defense minister, and now a women's finance minister, we have largely had a gender non-inclusive legislature. One way to solve this problem is to make it legally binding to have a fair proportion of women in elected bodies. This is what the Panchayati Raj has done in India. 1/3 of seats in local government bodies, in Panchayat and municipalities are now reserved for women. Now, there are more than 10 lakh elected women representatives in rural and urban local bodies. Women's representation in local governments can make a difference. Research on panchayats in India discovered that the number of drinking water projects in areas with women-led councils was 62% higher than in those with men-led councils. Women legislators in India raised economic performance in their constituencies by about 1.8 percentage points per year more than male legislatures. Women's organizations and activists have been demanding a similar reservation of at least 1/3 of seats in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies for a while now. A bill called Women Reservation Bill with this proposal has been pending before the Parliament since it was first introduced in 1996. But there is no consensus over this among all the political parties. Odisha's Biju Janata Dal government introduced a resolution in the State Legislative Assembly proposing 33% reservation for women in Parliament and legislative assemblies. Gender division is an example that some form of social divisions need to be expressed in politics. This also shows that disadvantaged groups do benefit when social divisions become a political issue. Do you think that the women could have made the gains we noted above if their unequal treatment was not raised in the political domain? With this, we end today's session. Today, we found out how public expression of difference on the basis of gender can be positive for the society and country. We saw that although at present conditions are not in favor of women in all spheres, but there has been a considerable improvement and countries having equality between women and men have more equal and just society. And in this case, combination of politics and gender difference has been positive. Now let's end today's session with a small assignment. First question, define a feminist movement. What is their objective? Second question, unless women are empowered, their problems will never get adequate attention. Suggest any 3 ways to empower them. Third question, in our country, women still lag much behind men despite some improvements since independence. Support the statement by giving 3 reasons. Fourth question, explain the sexual division of labor. Fifth question, discuss the socio-economic conditions of women in our society. Has the political expression of gender division really helped? I hope you will be able to solve the assignment. I will see you soon. Thank you.